Hi, this is History with me, Dan. The charter oak is a famous symbol of the state of Connecticut. It appears on the state's quarter. It lends its name to roads and bridges, parks and entertainment venues, and a variety of products going back many years. And of course, it's in the name of innumerable businesses and institutions. This notable tree once stood in Hartford, not far from where Samuel Colt's famous firearms factory rose in the mid-19th century. The name Charter Oak came from its role in a legend passed down from colonial times. The colony of Connecticut had been granted a charter by King Charles II in 1662. The charter provided a great deal of self-governing autonomy for the colony, rights that Charles's successor, King James II, sought to restrict. In 1686, James consolidated the New England colonies with New York and East and West Jersey to create the Dominion of New England. He appointed Sir Edmund Andros as the Dominion's Governor-General. Becoming part of the new Dominion, each colony's charter was revoked, and Andros set out to collect them. When he arrived in Hartford in 1687, however, he ran up against the colonists' unwillingness to surrender their rights. According to the legend, when the charter was placed before him, somebody extinguished the lights, and in the confusion, Captain Joseph Wadsworth spirited away the charter, hiding it in a hollow within what we now call the Charter Oak. The Dominion of New England was soon abolished, and the 1662 charter remained the basis for Connecticut government until 1818. As the years went by, the Charter Oak became a prominent symbol of constitutional liberty and of the state of Connecticut, known as the Constitution State. Through the middle of the 19th century, the Charter Oak was a notable tourist attraction in Hartford and was the subject of some of the earliest photographs of the city, like this image taken in 1855. For a time, this photograph was forgotten, but when it was rediscovered in 1880, many people claimed to see the profile of George Washington in the tree's branches. To everyone's dismay, the mighty Charter Oak, which had been ailing for many years, fell during a storm on August 21, 1856. But this was not the end for the famous tree. Wood from the tree was used to create a great number of objects, from canes, picture frames, and wooden baseballs to chairs, like this one at the state capitol. So many things were created out of wood from the Charter Oak that when Mark Twain first visited Hartford in 1868, he joked that his guide had showed him charter oak enough to build a plank road from here to Great Salt Lake City. But where did the Charter Oak once stand, and how is it memorialized at that site today? Long before Europeans came to the banks of the Connecticut River, the oak was revered by Native Americans in the area, who held councils under its branches and would plant their corn when its leaves began to grow each year. This map, printed in the 1886 Memorial History of Hartford County, depicts the home lots of the early English settlers of Hartford as they existed in the year 1640. The Charter Oak stood on the property of George Willis, which was located south of what is today Charter Oak Avenue and west of what is today known as Popiliusco Court, which was once called Governor Street. Here's the same area depicted on Smith's 1855 map of Hartford County, printed in the year before the Charter Oak fell down. By that time, the old Willis estate was owned by the Honorable I.W. Stewart. This was Isaac William Stewart, a retired Whig politician, orator, and antiquarian who was what we might describe today as a civic booster for Hartford. It was Stuart who'd urged the Hartford Common Council to name the street to the east of his property Governor Street, because 5 governors of Connecticut had lived there. Stuart devoted himself to popularizing historic tales of old Connecticut, particularly about the Charter Oak. Stuart acquired the property through his marriage to Caroline Bulkley. The last Willis heir had died in 1827. The estate was then purchased by Stephen Bulkley. Bulkley tore down the old house on the property and erected a new federal-style mansion. Isaac W. Stuart married Bulkley's daughter Caroline, and the couple lived in the Bulkley house. Even before the great tree fell in 1856, Stuart controlled the doling out of its wood, which many people desired as souvenirs. As the Hartford Times reported in about 1854, quote, "In song and story the old oak is made famous, and thousands of strangers from abroad annually visit it. The tree stood upon the Willis place, now owned and occupied by Honorable I.W. Stuart, who kindly cared for it. A few years ago, some boys kindled a fire within its trunk, which burned out most of the rotten parts of it. Mr. Stuart soon discovered the fire and had it at once extinguished. He then, at considerable expense, had the hollow enclosed by a door with lock and key. He also had the stumps of branches that had been broken off, covered with tin and painted. The tree from this time seemed to be imbued with new life, each succeeding spring dressing itself in a richer and denser foliage. On the 22nd of November, the New Haven Fire Companies, who came up to join their brethren in Hartford on the occasion of their annual muster, visited the famous oak. They were, of course, kindly received by Mr. Stuart. To show them the capacity of the tree, he invited the firemen to enter the trunk. When 24 of the men belonging to Captain McGregor's company entered together, they came out, and 28 of Captain Thomas's company entered. By placing 28 full-grown men in an ordinary room of a dwelling, one may judge of the great size of the famous old Charter Oak." Unquote. Stuart became a close associate of the firearms manufacturer Samuel Colt, who was a master of publicity and embraced the symbolism of the Charter Oak. Colt hired Stuart to design emblems for his factory village of Coltsville, located just down the hill from the old Willis estate. Stuart oversaw a program of giving the streets of Coltsville names based on the area's early Native American and Dutch colonial history. In May of 1856, Colt and Stuart dedicated Charter Oak Hall, located just northwest of the Colt Armory. Charter Oak Hall was a community and cultural center built to serve the needs of Colt's workers. Just 3 months after the dedication, the famous Charter Oak fell. Soon after, Stuart and Colt hired cabinet maker and piano manufacturer John H. Most to design pianos and other pieces of furniture using wood from the oak, including the ornate Colt cradle carved for Colt's baby son Sammy, who did not survive infancy. By the end of the 1850s, the old Willis property was in the hands of a group of developers who laid out a new street, Charter Oak Place. In 1859, they removed the stump of the lost Charter Oak, and soon a residence was built, the Italianate-style home of the prominent lawyer A.P. Hyde, pictured here in an illustration from the 1886 Memorial History of Hartford County. South Congregational Church and the Synagogue of Congregation Beth Israel, now the Charter Oak Cultural Center. are shown in the distance. The place where the charter oak had stood was marked with a marble slab inserted in the low brick fence along the edge of the Hyde property. This corner was transformed in 1926 when a 5-story brick apartment building, designed by Berenson and Moses, replaced the old Hyde house. The public's fascination with relics from the oak had not faded. The Hartford Courant reported in 1927 that when the land was excavated for this apartment building, people came from all over New England to try and get their hands on a piece of the tree's roots. I think it may be the same marble block from the Hyde property indicating the site of the charter oak that is still there today, but now it's embedded in the side of the apartment building. Just across from it, on a narrow strip of land that separates the entrance to Charter Oak Place from Charter Oak Avenue, is a cylindrical monument commemorating the charter oak. Designed by the architect Charles Adams Platt, it was dedicated in 1907 by the Connecticut chapter of the Society of Colonial Wars. In 1905, when the Society began raising funds for the proposed monument, the Hartford Courant reported that, quote, "While the exact spot may not be located, it will certainly be accepted that the point where the monument is to stand must have at least been under the branches of the famous tree," unquote. The strip of land that contains the monument remains a park of the city of Hartford today. The tree is gone, but its relics remain, and its power as a symbol of constitutional liberty endures. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And if you'd also hit the like button, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching.